Well, ladies, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
So, what are your plans for today, Jake? After this?
Probably just go home and do nothing like usual.
What does that mean, though? Just sit there and watch TV?
Pretty much.
Okay. Why is that? You don't have any hobbies?
Not really, no. Not until next week when I'm working and this weekend when I go hunting.
And you haven't hunted since when?
January.
Okay. That sounds great. And you?
For when I'm doing the rest of the day?
Yeah.
Probably just get my run in and then take a shower, get some sleep, and be up nice and early for work tomorrow.
Okay, great. Now we got the important stuff out of the way.
Yeah.
Since you've never been on this podcast, tell me about who you are, how old you are, and what you have done for the last year of life.
So my name is Christoph Swanson. I am your tranny son. Did I say my age? I'm 23, gonna be 24 next month. And I don't know, this year's been pretty crazy for me. Having a fallout with my dad, grandfather passing away, and reconnecting back with my mom and moving into this household. So a lot of stuff going on this last year. Yeah, just been working, trying my best.
And you came from Texas?
Yep, going to school for a year out in Texas, and then came back home. Then when my grandfather was sick, decided to stay home. And then when he ended up passing, I was like, I don't really feel like leaving, so just decided to stay at home.
Jake?
Yeah, I'm Jake Callison. I'm 24. The last year's just kind of been working a couple different jobs, trying to figure out what I want to do. Struggling with money, trying to figure out ways to get that or get out of the hole.
Nice. That's pretty normal for 24.
Yeah.
And pretty normal with actually, yeah, I would think pretty normal. Transitional stuff like in between phases. Yeah. Fairly fresh out of high school, college, just getting out on your own. And I'm Mike Haley, 44, going to be 45 this year, recently unemployed.
Congratulations.
Welcome to the club.
Thank you. I mean, I still do jobs. I just don't get paid by the same employer or at all. But I'm trying not to be bitter about that. So I think that's one thing we all have in common is that we're in a transitional phase of our lives. What's interesting about that as a man is that there is a emasculating part of it where you lack some confidence because you feel like you're on a ship with no sails and you're just kind of floating around at sea and you're like hoping you find land somewhere and you're like, what the fuck? And in a world that's confused about what it means to be a man, it's even weirder. So I think that's common ground for all of us is in a transitional place and also a tumultuous culture. Society's a little like outrageous in many ways, or maybe that's just the perception. And then we're all, I'm assuming, living multiple lives online and in reality. So those are some weird aspects of who we are as straight men. I know I'm making an assumption here, but I think it's fair. Not that I'd have a problem if you guys were gay, because I think sucking dick qualifies either way. But yeah, so I think that's a good place to start. And for you, Jake, you are an artist. you've always been, I'm assuming always have been an artist.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah. And as of recently, well, not actually, Christoph has always been an artist with his body. Not that I find him attractive, but if I was, okay, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, that's okay.
But, you've always been an athlete, and that can be deemed as a creative process, how you navigate all those relationships and also the sport itself. And you've been predicting outcomes online when it comes to baseball.
Yeah.
So, you are a mathematician of sorts. Math is your forte. And this podcast being about creativity and how people use that to get through their mental state or mental challenges. I think for you, it'd be a little bit more of an interesting insight because maybe you don't see it that way, but how you've dealt with all of the changes within the last year of your life. I think from what I've seen, you've used exercise, fitness to sort of curb your enthusiasm and
Yeah,
stay
big time.
focused.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to me, like, you've helped me steer my creativity in the gym, like the homemade gym that we've made,
Oh yeah, yeah, it's amazing.
So yeah, I feel pretty good, even though I'm in the ocean in my little boat,
Yeah,
wondering where the fuck land is.
yeah, and I think going back to the gym, talking about it, I think it's like 50% physical to where like, yeah, you're obviously putting the work in, and another 50% mental, whether it's like a good escape to have like away from life or just like having a goal in mind. Like it's always good to be goal oriented, whether it's like wanting to hit like a PR on lifts or wanting to like cut down to a certain weight or get up to a certain weight. So yeah, I think having the gym and being able to work out has been amazing for definitely my mental and physical health, and I think for yours too.
Mm-hmm.
So you think that that's kind of helped, or obviously it's helped since baseball being over with. For those who don't know, me and Christoph met through baseball.
Yeah, of course.
Playing, Junior Olympics and travel ball, college, all that together.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
obviously, in baseball,
Baseball was our life.
Baseball was life. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it was wake up, school, baseball, workout, all that. So do you think now that baseball's over with, like, how was the transition to be creative from baseball to, I'll just say adulthood?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Growing up, finally not playing the kids game anymore.
Having bills and everything that life throws at you.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because I mean, we lived together for like a year or so, and before COVID hit in Yuba, and I mean, yeah, that was our lives. Maybe a little bit less of the school part than it should have been. Skipping classes once in a while, but everybody does that. But yeah, pretty much our whole lives were baseball, and definitely when it was over, there was like a gap missing in life, kind of how it felt. And yeah, I definitely feel like going a little bit harder in the gym helped to fill that, creative gap or creative hole inside of me.
I think Jake does a good job of filling that gap inside of you for sure.
Oh yeah, of course.
But,
especially how big he is in my life.
No, from the outside, you guys had a safe space in sports when things at home were a little weird and sketchy and dare I say chaotic emotionally. So like baseball was where you felt like things were structured. You had a structure. There were, everything had a place, and there was a place for everything, and it helped you feel safe.
Oh, most definitely.
And then when you get out of that scenario, it's like, well, what the fuck do I do with all this time? And I guess freedom is a way to look at it. Like, how do you manage your freedom, your liberation into adulthood? What do I do now? And I think to me that's interesting because you could go either way. You could totally trash your potential, or you can keep trying to chip away at it and make something happen, which is what I've seen both of you do. So that's unique to this situation. You're both people who have work ethic, care about your future, and are attempting to do something positive.
Yeah, I'm trying my best.
Yeah.
Going back to like the beginning, we were talking about being in like a transitional stage in life. And I think like everybody should go through that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like if you have your life like mapped out and planned out, good for you. That's awesome. But I think like building yourself, especially as a man, like it's good to have some hiccups in the road.
Yeah, the hardships that you can kind of grow from and learn from.
Yeah, it grows like who you are, and either you can cower down from it or like you can step up from it. And I think it's hard, especially being a strong-willed man, because it's hard to go out and like ask people for help and like, you know, admitting to yourself, you're like, you know, I'm not in a good space. Like I'm not where I should be in life right now. And I'm struggling, whether it's mentally, emotionally, or financially. And you don't feel good going to people and saying, hey, I'm struggling, I need help. Because like as a strong, independent man, you need to have that like, you know, I got this, like everything will be fine mindset.
Yeah, which that also ties into the emasculation aspect of dealing with this little scenario. But from what I understand, and you can clarify, you don't necessarily, Jake, you don't have a very close relationship with your father?
I mean, our relationship is very complicated. I'll say it's really hit or miss. You know, we'll have, and I mean, it goes both ways. You know, I've definitely, you know, we'll go months without talking, and you know, I mean, phone goes both ways. I could easily reach out, he could easily reach out, and it's just been, you know, he was raised country, you know, on a ranch, and you know, he has his specific ideals or ideas of a man, like what a man should be.
Right.
So, you know, when I was playing baseball, he didn't really care because of the fact that, okay, you're getting your education and you're playing baseball, you're fine. But right when baseball ended and, you know, I didn't go straight to work, it was a big deal. You know, it's like, how are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to support a future family? Like, what's your career look like? What are you going to be at in 10 years if you follow down this path? And no matter what the answer was, it was kind of just figure it out and get on it now.
Yeah.
You know, and especially with when I stopped playing baseball due to the tumor in my colon. And, you know, he's a big, strong country guy. And it was, you know, you should still be able to work, even though it was like, Dad, I can't physically get out of bed to go to the bathroom. And so that was hard on me, you know, mentally, because it's like, I could tell from his point of view, I was more of like a disappointment.
Sure.
Instead of him worrying more so about my health and just getting better so I could get to that point where I could work and pay bills, support myself, whatever the case.
Interesting. I think that's interesting because teenagers, I have a teenager. You've met my son, Declan. He's been known to twist the truth in ways that would benefit his liberties. And I don't necessarily blame him for that, but deciphering the reality of what's happening versus his emphasis on it it's very temperamental with the relationship and the trust. And I'm curious, when you tell me your story, like, is that something that your dad dealt with? Were you somebody who pulled the wool over his eyes and he got to this point and he's like, you know what, I can't take your word for it?
Not really with my dad, no. I definitely, we'll call it, stretch the truth with my mom.
Sure.
Because she was a lot more lenient and I knew I could get away with those things, which, you know, looking back, it was obviously bad and I regret those decisions. But with my dad, I've always, you know, my parents divorced when I was super young.
Oh, okay.
Same.
So it's like my dad was always, you know, he was like a friend father, you know, and it was more so that I could tell him whatever I was doing, you know, whether it was, you know, if I was getting into fights or if I was drinking, you know, whatever the case was. You know, I didn't tell my mom, but I would tell my dad. I think it was more so the fact that because when I first graduated from high school, I went straight to work for the company that he was a big deal at. And about a year in, I realized I want to go back and play baseball. And because I was big on the what ifs, and 10 years from now, I didn't want to look back and think, what if I went back and played baseball? So I think me quitting that job was kind of a bit, or I know it was a big deal to him, but I didn't understand how big of a deal it was, because that was worse than just lying to him from what I've experienced. Yes. So I think it was more so after that, he thought my work ethic was just shitty or whatever he thought.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take the words from his mouth, but
He had already made up his mind.
Yeah, he had already made up his mind, I believe. So, when I had the tumor, he thought I was kidding about it. Like, he thought I was lying because I didn't want to go to work, even though that was when I was playing baseball, and I had to stop playing baseball, which was the only thing that
he thought that was the right kind of approach to take with you.
Yeah.
That would motivate you to get off your ass.
Yeah. So, for me personally, the only two things, and I know Christoph can relate to one of them. The only things in life that I ever truly cared about were baseball and hunting. So giving up baseball the first time out of high school, going to work, that was hard enough, but then giving it up because I was sick, that was, devastating. And, for him to kind of accuse me of just not wanting to work or whatever he thought, that was harder on me.
Yeah. Well, I can't really, I guess I could relate if I kind of blocked, at 44, I've kind of fathered myself for a while now, not to discredit my dad. He did the best he could with what.
Oh, and I'm not discrediting my dad at
No, I'm
all.
not saying you
no,
are.
I know. I just want to clarify that, because he's, especially with my stepmom and my half siblings, he's a great father.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, to me too, he's a great dad.
Yeah,
but, it was always just, my biggest thing was disappointing him, because I always wanted to make him proud, and
Right.
I didn't even think about the fact that I was trying to.
Yeah.
With baseball, I credit it to, I'd give my mom so much credit, because she was a single mother, and she would go out and, give me soft toss, whatever the case.
Yeah.
She did everything she could, but it was, even as far as when I first met Christoph and we played on that national junior Olympic team together, he was the first person I called, and that wasn't even, I didn't even think about it. It was just, I immediately called him and I was like, hey, I made this team, blah, blah, blah. Didn't tell my mom, even though she was in the stands. It was always trying to make him proud of me. And I think the more I've grown up, I'm at the point now where I don't care what other people think.
Sure.
In
Or
general,
at least that's the practice
that's the practice I'm going for.
Yeah, I got you. I hear you. So Christoph knew you at this time when you were going through all this crazy hard shit, which obviously strengthened your bond. But I would assume that your hardship with what you had going on between you and your dad helped see the missing, I guess, care that was happening with Jake, and maybe helped you become an even better friend. How did that affect you and the way things were going with you and your dad? And this was before you had the falling out with your dad and all the unraveling started. So you had a different perception of him at that time.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to talk about my dad. Just because there's so much that I can get into. Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying how it pertains with Jake. So you can paraphrase however much, but I think as a friend, but more importantly, as young men in tumultuous relationships with your fathers, and maybe someday will become fathers, like the kind of, I guess, brotherly love could also be seen as a fatherly energy.
Yeah, just because I've obviously experienced tough love or tough parenting, of my dad being a hard ass, either yelling at me or sometimes hitting me if he really felt like he needed to discipline me. So I definitely knew about putting that kind of shell or fake skin on like showing other people like I'm okay, even though like I'm not, which is why like there were some times where, you know, like one example I remember is when you stayed late in the cages and you were just hitting. I don't know if you remember that, but you were just hitting off the tee and I was just feeding balls, and then like you took a swing and then you just kind of started like breaking down a little bit.
Yeah.
And like that's why I stayed with him. I didn't say anything. I wasn't
Right.
pressing. I knew something was wrong, just because like I knew there were times where something was wrong with me and I can tell. And I think it's super important that like you need to have somebody to like lean on at all times, just because I mean the world wasn't built to be easy, you
Sure.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, if life is easy for you, I think that just shows how like super privileged you are. But
It's
like,
coming either way. If you
Yeah.
got it easy now,
yeah,
it
it'll
will-
come in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, but life is tough, and it's extremely tough if you have to do stuff on your own by yourself. So whether it's a family member or a friend or just maybe some like random dude you need to talk
Sure,
to at like
yeah.
the grocery store or something, like
Yeah.
you need somebody there for you that can pick you up when you need it.
yeah. Well, I was a mama's boy growing up. My mom is a super duper emotional, alcoholic, loving mom. We were best friends when I was a kid. But the stuff that I went through, like there was a lot of anxiety pumped into my situation. And so I learned to be a bit of a worrywart, and I would latch on like OCD about things I would worry about. I remember in elementary school, I used to be out on the playground and I would just look at the clouds and think, is that a tornado? Is that one going to be a tornado? And then we learn about earthquakes and I'm like, fuck, underneath, over me. So it was really intense being a super sensitive kid. And of course, this is a superpower sometimes because I can feel what somebody else is feeling and I can meet them in the middle and like really be there for somebody. I know that that's a niche, but when it works against me, it's a little embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
But as it relates to both of your stories, and as a father of a young, up and coming adolescent man, boy, male, whatever, and he's ultra masculine. He loves UFC. He loves sports, and I was a mama's boy.
Yeah.
So it's like you guys have more in common with that side of my son than I do. But yet I think the three of us relate in the way we've dealt with trauma and how we've dealt with a very unpredictable and transitional lifestyle. And because, well, let me ask you this. How do you feel about the near and distant future as it relates to where society is and your prospective goals and the careers you've chosen? Like, do you worry about where the future's going? Do politics weigh you down? Or do you have hope?
I mean, personally, I mean, as far as my career I've chosen, I mean, I'm comfortable with it. You know, I chose electrician, and I mean, especially with the way the world's going, everything's AI and technology based. I have no problem with that, but just seeing how crazy the world has turned, even in the last 4 years, that's the only thing that worries me, is just what with all the shootings and like everything wrong with the world, just almost seeming like it's getting worse every day. That's the thing that worries me, because for me, I want to have a family in the future. I want to have kids, and it's just hard to imagine bringing kids into the world with the way it is. I mean, you got school shootings and everything like that, and it scares me to send my kids off to almost danger.
Yeah,
realistically,
that's a good point. There's times when Declan's school is calling, and I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
Every time they call me, but it's usually because I'm gonna hope he didn't bust out a knife again and is threatening somebody's life. But either way, you hear about schools in the news, and you're like, oh God, what now? It is. It's really quite scary. It almost feels like a nuclear bomb's going to go off any moment. You know, when you really think about it, you're a fairly upbeat, positive guy. You don't ever
I
seem to
am.
be bogged down by
Yes.
generic information like that. So
Yeah. I think it helps being super positive from not watching the news.
fair enough.
Just
Yep.
because I think life is too short to like worry about that stuff, and I think it's smart to have like backup plans, or it's smart to like practice things. So like at school, how they do like their school shooting drills or whatever to practice for it. I get it, it makes sense, but I don't think you should live your life like scared or worried, and then going into, like you said, the political aspect on things. Like I have my own political idea on how the country should be ran, but I think just over time and the whole like political party stretch on things has literally divided the country, and how you're either here or you're here. And if you're on either side, like you can't be friends, or you just can't get along, which I think is stupid. Like everyone is human. I don't think anybody is better than each other. No one's worse than one another.
And everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
I wish that's how everybody viewed it, because I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, but your opinion's wrong and mine's right. So
But no, I mean, like you said, it's very accurate. You're either here, you're here. And if you're not agreeing with the other person, you're just at war with them.
Yeah.
It's your enemy. Whereas, me personally, everybody around me knows that I talk to everybody. Christoph will tell you that we could be somewhere completely random, not even close to home, and somebody will come up and know me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just because I talk to people no matter what. I tell them, I'm like, I don't care what your political views are, your religious views are. I'm like, you're entitled to your own opinion, but just don't push them on me or try to convert me, because I'm strong in my beliefs. But you're entitled to your own.
Yeah, like it's never happened to me personally, but like I've heard it from some friends, or I've seen it like online before. For me, being a Republican and a Trump supporter, I have heard it of like,
That's the
You're a
only reason
racist.
you can live here.
yeah,
You're
true.
a racist.
Yeah, I know. But I have heard of like people that don't know each other, and they'll say like, yeah, like I'm a Republican, I'm a Trump supporter. And then somebody on the left will say, okay, well, I can't be your friend then. I'm like, well, you don't even know me. Like, how can you just say that we can't get along just because I
Yeah.
support a political party?
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much to say about all of that. That's why I've written a rap song about it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, more on that later. But the modern controversies, men and women's sports, is that something that like affects your life in any way? It feels like the most distant thing from my life, but seems to be the most prevalent thing in my feed in my phone.
You mean of like men participating in women's sports?
No, men that apparently are claiming to be women playing women's sports.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but you weren't PC enough.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Which I guess is the controversy. Like, what am I saying?
I mean, in regards to the whole LGBTQ, talk that you can have, in my opinion, if you want to do what you want to do, if you want to suck dick as a guy, if you want to, if I feel like I'm a woman, do it. Who cares? But don't force anything on me. And when it comes to sports, I mean, like, what was it like in the Olympics? There was like a biologically male boxer that was like physically hurting other women. Like, I don't think you should be doing that. Or like in school, like in college, how there was like that biologically male swimmer or something, like taking scholarships and like prizes away from like actual women. So it's like you kind of have to pick a side, whether if you agree in like the feminist movement and you want women to succeed, or if you're cool with men going into women fields.
I mean, realistically, though, I mean, at this day and age, there's so many now, which I agree with Christoph. You know, if that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
You know, you're entitled to your own opinion, but I think with how many people are like that nowadays, I think the easiest way to kind of get over all that is just, I mean, have
its own group or
have
like
its own
division.
group, you know, I mean, we got transgender bathrooms. Why can't we just have transgender sports? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, because I mean, obviously, it's not affecting the three of us personally, but it does affect those who are, you know, like the women who are trying to compete.
Well, not yet. I will be transitioning in about a month.
But it is, you know, for the women that were born women and they're trying to get scholarships for whatever sport, they are getting chances taken away from them, which is shitty. But
I think the easiest way to think about it is if you had a direct involvement with someone in the mix of it, a daughter, a wife, a child, you know, like if my son decided he wanted to be the greatest female UFC fighter of all time, and you know he goes up against a man, well, you know what, that's a unique one. Like if he goes up another man who thinks that he's the greatest female UFC fighter, that'd be a fair fight.
Yeah, right.
So you're right, they should have their own category.
yeah,
But if my son was mostly effeminate, and wanted to make the whole journey from here to there, and I wanted to be a loving, supporting father, what would that look like? Because I think that's the most compassionate place to be if I were to have an opinion on it. It's hard to have an opinion on it that's like rock solid because I don't relate to it on a regular basis. But kind of like both of you are saying, like, I don't really give a fuck what you like to do with your private parts. I don't care. I don't like that the streaming websites decided that they want to put homosexuality in every fucking script on every episode, and it seems like in every show.
and now they're teaching it in schools, and
Yeah, it's like, okay, I don't have to like celebrate it. I can accept it, but what's wrong with the traditional male-female relationship? It's almost like they're trying to eliminate that because it's so offensive that that people are tired of like the opposite.
well, I mean, that's the other problem with today is that, I mean, everyone's just so soft, we'll call it. Because, I mean, everyone just gets offended. You know, like we were talking about being, you know, masculine and like going back to what we were talking about earlier, you know, not wanting to ask for help because you're a man, independent man. And, I mean, nowadays, everybody's just...
Yeah, it's a good point because it's like, okay, so too masculine's wrong, not masculine enough is wrong. Somewhere in the middle, you could be confused and manipulated to think you're a female. It is a very, it's a very controversial subject matter, but it's almost like, because I grew up with a lot of ultra masculine machismo men, kind of like how your dad is, where he's like, get off your ass and you got fucking colon cancer. I grew up around men like that, where you learn to shut out and shut down, and you don't ask for help. You don't let people, like, so for instance, I worked in concrete trucking, which is predominantly male drivers, male environment. When you get to a point where you're burned out, you're tired, you don't really want to keep working, but there's this phrase, well, you got to get your hours. So you carry on and you push forward and you go out there on your 13th hour in traffic. It's rush hour, and you shouldn't be behind the wheel at this point. Mentally, like, you are not fit to be safely moving this large, heavy piece of equipment safely. And I think I said safely twice, but that's fine.
It's okay. Words are hard.
You're a mathematician. I'm hoping you're not paying attention. But the whole thing is like, when is it okay? Not just to anybody else observing, but to you. When is it okay to say, hey, I'm too tired. I'm not safe behind the wheel anymore, without feeling like you're going to get some sort of ridicule or a repercussion for for saying I'm tired, I'm done. And I've been through those experiences where I've finally convinced myself, just tell him you're not, it's not safe for you to carry on. And I had to work through this whole process internally, like, to make myself feel like it's okay to like bow out now. But this is a challenge for most, I think, men in a very masculine work environment, you know. So it's hard being a man. My pussy hurts.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's so bad.
Yeah, but I think like just going back to things and how everything's black and white, like for everything, whether like we were talking about politically or like with the whole like transgender thing, you're either on this side or you're on this side, and like you have to pick. And like for being super masculine, like you said, you're either too masculine, which is a bad thing, or like not enough, which can be seen as a bad thing, and either way you pick, someone's not gonna like it. And I think we just need to develop some like gray area in life that like if you want to live your life how you want to, you should be able to. And I was gonna ask, because I'm not a father, and Jake,
not that you know of.
Not that I know of course. Jake, I don't think you're a father.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, not yet. So being a dad to a teenager, and also I will say being a dad to me, just because I've been here for a while and I've known you for a long time, and with my kind of like fallout with my dad, you've taken over that like that male role model or like male figure in my life. So with being a dad, obviously you're going to have expectations for your kid, because you want him to be successful. You don't want him to just be like a bum or like a loser in life. So at what point do you draw of you have certain goals and expectations for him that you want him to go one way, but then he might have a way that he wants to live, or if he has certain passions that he wants to pursue that you might not agree with, but he's like, this is something that I really want to do and I want to go after. What's kind of like your gray area on that kind of thing?
So this is a great question. When it pertains to my son and his desires, his passions, the habitual nature of his personality, these things that he expresses interest in, things that I'm interested in that he's not interested in, like these are all things that I have to process on a regular basis, and I go to bed feeling guilty about. But that said, it's normal for a dad to go to bed, dare I say a dad who cares, to go to bed feeling a little bit inadequate. When it comes to my son, I often pull from the relationship with my father, as I think many men do, and do an analysis and think, what would I have wanted my father to do? Some of the exceptions are that my son and his personality is he thinks a lot less emotionally when it comes to processing information.
Right.
So something that I would have reacted to, there's no resemblance of my reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm stunned sometimes. And I'm like sitting here apologizing to him. Sorry, son, I get so anxious. He's like, yeah, okay. Okay, whatever. And I'm sitting here like, why the fuck do I even say anything?
Yeah.
But that being said, like, I have established early on with Declan that I'm going to tell you what's on my mind, and it comes from my truth, but you are never obligated to do anything that you're not comfortable doing based on information I share. The only thing you're obligated to do is hold space for what I'm trying to tell you. Consider what I'm telling you to be true, either for you or for your future, because that's my job ultimately, is to help protect you from yourself, from destroying your future.
Right, because a 16-year-old does not have the whole world figured out.
Of course.
Even though
he's allowed to be a dumbass.
Yeah.
He's allowed to be a dumbass.
Yes.
Overtly masculine teenager. And I actually love that about him, that he's his own person. He has his own ideas of what a man should be, and I'm not telling him how to do it, obviously. I'm over here painting pictures and saying, yes, got myself a tranny son. And, like, he adores some of those things about me. There's a fair trade, but I think it's because I've always committed to loving my son the best I can with who I am, and not pretending to be anything else. And always letting him know, like, when I'm anxious, I'll tell him, hey man, it's not you, it's me.
Right.
I'm fucking going through shit. Please understand. Like last night, I thought I heard him yelling, but it was you down here being loud when you were talking to your mom or some shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I called him. I'm like, hey, we're fucking playing Xbox. Get off the fucking Xbox. He's like, well, what the fuck? I'm watching my phone. And I'm like, okay, sorry, bro. I'm tired. I'm going through some shit. My bad.
Yeah.
He knows that I'm going to communicate that stuff. So I try to make it a point to let him know, give him as much warning. I'm going through something. This isn't your shit. Please don't take it personal. I'm blessed. This is how clever God is. He gave me a son that is not like me in terms of emotionality. He's like my dad.
Yeah.
You know, he hears the information, but his filtration process is like, I'll get to that later.
Yeah.
And for me, you say something to me, I'm like, oh my God, what did I do?
You got to
I'm so
analyze
sorry.
it like 3 different ways.
Yeah. And then going back to our newfound love and friendship, relationship, father, son, brother. This is a very, very unique, blessed situation because our personalities, our chemistry is just on point.
Yes.
Like you are as much sensitive as I wish to be, but
yes.
but we're also matched, like in terms of masculinity. Like we enjoy the abilities that God put into these bodies, the fact that we can lift these heavy weights, and we admire the strength that we can, you know, grow, and like that's something that we honor as a man. But at the same time, like yesterday I wasn't fucking happy. I didn't feel good. I felt like I could tell you I don't feel like going in there, and you're like, yeah, but it's gonna feel good. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not in that mood. I'm mad at something, or I'm going through some shit. I feel like shit. And you're like, that's okay too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah,
Like you can't ask for that. It either happens or it doesn't. And to me, like it's one of the miracles I got to be thankful for.
Right.
That I can have another man in my house and just be honest with, and not feel like it happens anyway. Like your masculinity gets in the way, egos fuck with your head. But in the end, I know I can come talk to you.
Right.
And you don't hold anything against me. There's no standard that you're like, well, you're not a man.
Yeah, no, because I mean that moment that did happen yesterday. I think I related so much to it just because I'm like, oh wow, like I've been there before. Like I've had those same exact thoughts before, but like I've never expressed it. So when you said it, I was like, wow, that was like, like if anything, that was like super strong of you to do.
I had to, because I couldn't keep lying to you.
Yeah, right.
I was trying to keep your level of energy and your positivity, because I didn't want to rob you from that. Like it's my problem, not yours. So when we had that moment, all I could offer you was truth. So I just had to be like, I'm not happy.
Yeah.
You know, and I knew you would receive it the way I needed it to, and you just let me go. Like all I'm doing is asking you, just like, just don't lean on me right now. I'm not the one. And it should be okay, and it was okay.
Yeah, and I just know, like, sometimes like just support is like the best thing to do. Like just having somebody there. I mean, kind of going back a little bit to like supporting your kid and that kind of stuff, and like goals and everything. Like going back to like when I was playing baseball, and like my dad was over here and like being like a coach, whether if he was like actually my coach or if he was just in the stands like yelling at me, oh, do this like with my swing, like don't take strikes and all that,
Don't sacrifice bat speed.
or like compared to like when you and my mom would like go to games. And I mean, you've already flat out said like you don't follow sports or baseball that much, and like I know my mom knows a little bit, but obviously she's not a baseball savant.
Sure.
And I know you guys might not know like everything that's going on, but like you two just being there and like watching me and supporting me, like I think that's just like you can't ask for more. And I think that's when sometimes like in life, sometimes you just need somebody there to support you.
Yeah. And that, you know, like I don't have anything against your dad. I never have. Some of the characteristics of what's been told about him, I wouldn't want to deal with that in any way, whether adopting it for myself or absorbing it from somebody else. As a father and as a man who struggles in his own body, in his own image, I feel bad. I can relate as a brother. Like, man, I feel bad for how intense it is in his relationships, because it must be really intense inside.
Right.
And that's usually how I'll size up somebody who's being difficult. And, like, we all stumble over that sort of thing. But to be fair, like, I've been through so much therapy. I've been through, I think, because of how anxious I was going through life before therapy, I needed help. I didn't know how to ask for it. I didn't know what I should be doing. And not to bash on my dad and his fathering, but like, he didn't know how to be there for me. He didn't know how to be there for an overly emotional young man. It's fucking difficult, probably really scary, but like I said, God's clever. He didn't give me that kind of son. I'm not saying my son doesn't have feelings, because that's a dangerous thing to think.
Yeah, right.
But my son, he appreciates me wearing my feelings on my sleeve. He knows if I'm fucking snappy or snippy and I'm like, no, don't. He's like, I'll come back later.
Yeah.
He doesn't take it personal. If I were to come up to my dad and he did that, I'll be crying in my room like a little girl writing in my diary. 100%. Not that girls are the only ones writing in diaries, but
yeah, I have a diary, so
yeah, I've read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're not here, I go in your room.
Yeah, but like what you're talking about of having like going to therapy. Like, I've never been to therapy per se. I don't know if you've ever had a therapy session, but like, sometimes I need my own therapy sessions. Like, you know, if I have a shit day, sometimes I need to go to the gym, and sometimes the gym is my therapy session. Sometimes like I'll have a bad shift at work, at night, and I'll get off and I'll text Jake and I'll be like, hey, can we like play prop hunt on Black Ops? And sometimes that's just playing and like just talking shit with a buddy. Like, sometimes that's therapy, and it just makes me feel better.
You are a rare person who has a level of scientific intelligence, but emotional intelligence. Your mom's the same way. Like, when you reach a certain level of intensity, you do something about it. And it isn't drugs or alcohol. That's not your forte. I've been taught in my upbringing, but that's to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. But I'm saying, when you're dealing with life's toughest moments, you don't go running.
Yeah.
I did that for a very long time. And until I learned how to communicate feelings and emotions, and honestly take a step back and look at my actions from a parental perspective, I didn't know how to have compassion for myself. But with you and your mom, like, you guys are so good at setting boundaries and doing what's right for you until you're back to a place where you can share space safely, not project your shit on anybody else. So that builds this inherent trust with me. And so like, and by God's design, like, the relationship I have with your mom, like, I can be as outrageous as I want. She's really good at saying, it's a little too much, fucker.
Yep. Trust me, I've heard it a couple times.
So I don't know where you could get a better friend than that. Somebody who can say, hey, calm the fuck down, and you not take it personally. Oh, shit. Yeah, you're right. My bad. Like, yeah. So the fact that you're a lot like your mom, I don't know what the fuck I did right, but
yeah, I think part of the reason why I feel like I'm in such a good spot now is just because of all the like life experience I've had and all the people around me. Because I think it's stupid to go through your life and think that you have stuff figured out. Like,
right.
Like, somebody is always going to be more knowledgeable about things than you, and someone's going to have a different way than you might do things, and you might be like, oh, this is kind of weird, but sometimes it might be better. So, picking things like obviously from my mom and from my dad, because, even though he was a hard ass, he definitely taught me a lot of things of like having a backbone and like being strong and, standing up for myself. And there's a lot of things that like he instilled into me, and like my brain had to kind of like pick and choose what stuff what stuff do I want to keep, what stuff was a little too much and I gotta throw out. And Jake, I wanted to ask you, because I feel like I had like those people around, even like Lucas, my coach, because I've known him for like almost half my life, and he instilled a big part into me. But with like all these people in your life, whether it's just your parents or like could be friends too, how do you think that's gonna like change you, like when you become a parent?
Kind of based off, or like what you said, just kind of taking a little bit from everyone, and same as what you said, picking what to keep with you and what to kind of toss away. I think just everyone in my life that's, been close enough with me that I can trust the things that they're giving me, like whether it's advice or whatever, you being one of them, even
Thanks.
my dad, mom, grandparents, and just close friends in general. I think it's going to be just exactly like what you said, just taking the things that I want or the things that I need,
right.
Even because obviously, a lot of the tough love you need to keep with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though you don't want to, but I think just taking all those is going to be, and, correct me if I'm wrong, but being a parent, it's especially for the first time, like first kid, it's a scary thing. You don't have a handbook on what to do, but yeah, just taking the advice from people that, whether it's relative, like whether it's, if I got advice from you, since you have kids, it's
a double-edged sword, man. Like the biggest privilege is that you don't even have to look for a purpose anymore. It's been your priorities are set. You don't have to. All you got to do is keep this thing afloat. Me personally, because I'm a more creative-based personality, I like to. It's how I cope with my mentality, my mind, and what I know of it. My creativity is a side effect of that, or a coping mechanism. Like, as a father and a provider, my job is just to make sure that bills are paid and my kid's got a roof and he's fed.
Yep.
Like, that's what it is. And honestly, you can get a lot out of life just as that. And raising a person to be in the world that produces a lot of things to be scared of and a lot of things to be paranoid about. If you can help facilitate safe space for somebody who can go out there and give respect to the community, it's your only obligation. But I tend to be a little more complex. I like to do a lot more. And so, but I think I can't let that escape my mindfulness. I have to know, like, if I'm going to do all this shit, where does my son play into it? And I think that's the only difference is, as a single person, and maybe this is philosophical for me, just because you don't personally have kids or haven't birthed children or been a part of that, because I don't think you can actually birth children.
Don't assume my gender.
But I think that if you find opportunities to share space with kids or younger people, you're just as responsible as a parent. And I think if you're aware of that, if that's in your awareness, you're going to be a great parent. And not only that, you're the best of the community. And it's your, as a survivor of your own past, it's your obligation to pay it forward.
Yeah.
And that is the purpose alone. You don't have to have children to have that kind of purpose, but just be aware you're going to be around other children, and people talk shit about the future. But if you're not conscious of those moments where you share time with children and you're not doing everything you can to provide a positive experience or a safe space for them, then you're the problem.
Yeah.
But if you're conscious of it, and like the other day, that little girl was here and you're like, fuck yeah, fucking love little girls. Like, what better opportunity than to unlock the little girl inside you? Like, we are the same, kind of like you guys were saying earlier. Like, we're all the same. Doesn't matter what your preferences are in any way. The fact that we all need love, we all need to experience sharing and giving our love, like that'll never change.
Yeah.
You know, throughout all time, no matter what society's doing, no matter what controversies in culture, that shit will never change. And I think people who are emotionally equipped to analyze their moments, like, that's where you're going to end up anyways, you know? And if you want to suck dick, Jake, I'm never going to judge you. I think that
Well, yeah, you're probably going to hit me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wait till these cameras turn off.
Yeah. Well, when they're off, I'll still be on.
Switching the topic a little bit.
Yep.
I know a week or two ago, in the gym, when we were having our therapy session,
Oh, shit.
and we were having a really good talk.
Yep.
About another, I guess, parent, you can say.
Yep.
Our one true Father.
Yep.
Lord Jesus Christ. So I guess question to both of you guys, or either of you, just like how big of an impact, like,
Look at you, podcaster.
do you feel that God has done in your life?
I love it. I guess if I'm to answer first, I'll say this, and I'll keep it short. So Jake, you can, because I don't know much about your faith and how you practice this part of your life, but I spent a large amount of time. Well, when I was young, when I was looking at those clouds, looking for tornadoes, I was also praying, because I had the fear of God. I had this understanding that, like, things are way too big for this to just be me. I had a relationship. And then at some point, I think because of my relationship with my mom, I was so frustrated and so mad. And the fact that my father couldn't relate to me, I just, in that circumstance, I let go, and I was like, you know what? There's nothing out there. And that was what I advocated for such a long time, that when it all came to a head and I was sick of the relationships that I was in, I was sick of what the things I worship leading to the same vile, desperate scenarios, I finally rekindled the relationship with God, started the conversation again, didn't expect an answer, and he's answered tenfold every time. A miracle's been delivered. And even going back to the relationship with your mom, like, I remember vaguely having a conversation with God. I don't even remember at this point if it was just in my mind or in a dream or just vocally out loud, but
It doesn't matter. Whatever it was, he still heard you.
it exactly.
Yeah.
It's a memory, and I cherish it, and I share it as often as possible. But when I asked for a partner, I mean, it was down to the hair color, the height, the build, the personality, and her faith in God as well. And lo and behold, I met Adriana, and, like, when that happens, you can't exactly go back. You can't deny the fact that this prayer's been answered. Well, I'm in now, like, it's done deal. But like, I kind of knew it through all that bullshit I was spitting out about, nah, that's not real. And I even remember arguing with some Russian guy outside of a house one time. It was a long story, but I remember trying to convince him, like, yeah, it's just bullshit. And, like, I think of myself in that way when I'm processing my life through faith and seeing reflections of the moments that I had without faith, where I'm like, is that real? And this is kind of like what the conversation we had, like, where you're thinking, like, what am I praying to? Who am I talking to? What am I really doing? Why does this even really matter? And to me, if we're looking at it as a mathematical equation, this math has worked a lot better than the math without faith. Long story short. Or long.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I've always been religious, always been Christian, and, I never went to church on Sundays. I mean, I've been a couple times, but, not every weekend type thing. And, for me, it was, especially the last couple years, everybody, like, a lot of people ask the question, oh, if God's real, then why does he let, all these bad things happen?
Yeah, like why is cancer a thing?
Yeah,
Why do
just
babies die? Yeah.
Yeah, all just everything wrong. And I was selfish. So, I was like, why are these bad things happening to me? Whether it was the tumor or just whatever was going on. But I think, the more I thought about it, and, it's like God gives his hardest battles to his strongest warriors type. And I've really embraced that God has a plan for all of us. If it wasn't baseball for me, then, I'll be happy to see what I'm going to do in life. And I think, it's funny because last night I was telling you earlier, I was doing a little Bible study with my younger sister, and
Right.
it was kind of eye opening. We were reading verses and taking notes on it, kind of writing down what we both personally thought it meant to, or what it meant to us. And, it made me kind of realize that I want to get stronger in my beliefs. I want to read the Bible more and go to church. Because I've prayed and I've had prayers answered, but it was just hard for me when I was struggling. At my lowest. And I'll say the tumor was probably the lowest because of the fact that I had to give up baseball, which
Yeah, makes sense.
that was, like we talked about, that was our lives.
Yeah,
Right.
literally.
I always said that if baseball didn't work out, I was going to go front lines of the army because I'd rather be dead.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was just really eye opening last night, especially just kind of reading the verses, and they kind of hit hard. Like, I was telling you, we were doing it randomly. You flip to a random page, and then like,
what's the one that hit the hardest?
Last night, probably. Oh, what was it? It was Psalms. Oh, which one was it?
What was it?
It was basic. The way I interpreted it was more or less that you're gonna have struggles, and it's how you overcome them, and that God is always with you.
Mm-hmm.
And just doing it randomly like we were, it kind of felt like, because it was the last one, my parents had just gotten home with dinner, and opened the back door, and we're like, hey, dinner's here, come in. And my little sister was like, we're gonna do one more.
Yeah, and that was the last one.
And that was the last one, and it kind of hit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah,
yeah, it just leaves you with like a damn, okay,
Yeah,
like I hear
exactly.
you kind of moment.
exactly, with it being randomized like that.
Yeah, and I think it's so tough just because when life's going good and like everything's going how it should be, it's so easy to say like, oh, thank you God,
Yes,
this is amazing.
Amen.
And when like when tough shit's going on, like when I'm involved in that shooting in Texas, and then my grandfather dies, and then the fallout with my dad, and like for you recently with your whole job situation, it's hard to look and say, oh, thank you God for putting me in a hard situation.
Even
like
when
I
you
appreciate
say it, like to really embrace it is a whole other journey.
Yeah, so you have to put yourself in the mindset of like, yeah, it's kind of weird saying like, oh, thank you God for giving me struggles, but it's like a how are you gonna take it? Like, yeah, life's gonna be tough, but are you gonna lean on your addictions? Are you gonna lean on alcohol? Are you gonna lean on drugs to get you through it? Or are you gonna lean on your faith? And are you gonna lean on the hard work and effort?
How do you do that though? How do you blindly lean on faith? I have an answer, but I'm curious as to what you will say.
How do I blindly lean on faith?
How do you, when you're going through your struggles and as a believer, what does that look like to you as a Christian person?
So this is going to sound weird, but being such like a, I guess, analytical person, and like for me feeling like I always have to think things through, that's the way that I go about like my life. And sometimes that's how I go about religion. Like I'll be sitting there at nights and I'll think about, gosh, there isn't proof. Like you can pray all you want and you're not going to hear another voice back. And you can do whatever you want, and as for us humans, we can't prove that any of it's true.
Right.
So it's hard. So having that full 100%, I believe no matter what, for me, that's hard. But like when I think things through of like the world and of how like beautiful and how intricate it is and how everything had to be perfect, like there had to be a designer, there has to be a creator.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of sparks my like, okay, yeah, it makes sense that God is true. And then, just seeing things in my life. Like, I was going through some hard times, but then, when like the whole fallout thing with my dad was starting up, and then I moved in with,
right.
And then
the outcome
towards the end, like I start going to church with you guys, like almost every Sunday. So like getting God back into my life. And then that turned into Chaos moving in. And then as far as I know, everything has been like amazing in my life ever since I let God back into my life.
Which was really hard to try and be depressed when yesterday you're like, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
But to coattail what you're saying, faith is like a free fall that you have to embrace. You have to embrace that you have this one life and it's fleeting. Every moment is just going. And it seems time is so tricky because when you're contemplating on it, it seems so real and visceral. You feel like, oh, shit, anything that can happen will happen. And if I'm not prepared, and you go through this hypothetical, if I'm not equipped or I'm not trained to handle this next moment, what does that mean for me? And how does faith play a part in that? And it's like, I can't use that scientifically because there's no tangible thing that I can grab and use as a mathematical tool to work on this other equation. So it's this multiplicity of, okay, I accept that I'm a human species, that I'm inhabiting this body, sharing this experience with other like beings, but on a spiritual sense, on a metaphysical journey, as a consciousness inhabiting a body, like if I accept that I am part of something bigger, in my practice of worship, my active acknowledgement that that's happening, it's a conversation with that outer source. It's my actions are the actual thing that I'm saying in that conversation. And so it's like, okay, so what is faith? What does it look like if I were to believe that that's going to be the outcome? And you get reaffirming, or you get validating notions from God, let's say, like a wink or a confirmation. When, let's say today, for me specifically, today I'm talking to somebody at work and they're like, hey, guess what? So-and-so got your truck.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, the whole time I'm thinking, man, I hope this guy gets my truck. I know he'll take good care of it because I took really good care of that truck.
Yeah.
I honored the opportunity by taking really good care of that truck. And I get confirmation that this guy's got that truck.
You're like,
so
wow,
I know that this guy is rolling around in luxury.
Yeah.
Like finally in a comfortable space where he can think about his family and not worry about shit on the floor or shit breaking down. Like, I know this guy's been liberated as a father, as a provider, as a man in the job by what I've done for that particular piece of equipment. And so to me, this is a wink. This is like, hey, Mike, don't worry. Because you think it's so crazy, chaotic, and possibly a depressive sort of situation. It's not.
Yeah.
Someone else has come up. And to me, that's like, it's this sort of like nudge, like, don't worry, man.
Yeah.
Whatever's going on, it's not something that's unplanned or I don't know about. Like, you can embrace patience a little bit more than is easy for you, because it's really hard for my ADHD ass to be like, okay, I'll wait.
Yeah, and I know one of the things that is hard for me is like not knowing, not knowing the work I need to put in for a specific outcome. Like for us, for baseball, it's easy. If something's wrong, oh, I'm gonna tweak this in my swing. I'm gonna take
Get in the cage.
get extra work in, and then when the game comes, it translates. Oh, I went 2 for 4 with a home run and a double. Obviously, I'm doing good.
Yeah.
In regards to religion, like, is this a thing of like, oh, like I have my belief and like it's paying off in life, like, so that's what I need? Or like, do I need to go to church every single Sunday? Does church matter? Do I need to read my Bible? Coming from somebody that growing up, I didn't go to church and I didn't open up my Bible and read, but I knew who God was and I still felt like I had a relationship with him. But like now I have that struggle of not knowing what's enough. Jake, you said that you don't go to church a whole bunch. Does that matter?
I personally, I think it's where you're in the middle, where you're okay. Like sometimes it's okay to be in the unknown.
Yeah.
It's okay to be smack dab in the middle of your suffering. It's okay to be unsure. This is the privilege of being human.
Yeah.
Because I've often said and thought, if you had the answers, what's the point in going on?
Yeah, like you said, playing a video game and you have all the cheat codes doesn't make it fun.
It's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is where you get to embrace the likeness we are in God. The likeness, these are some of his struggles, because like if it becomes all of a sudden predictable and ultra manageable, well, what are we doing? Yeah. We're twiddling our thumbs when there's love from the privileges that we get to have that can be shared. And I think, oh, we got an entitled teenager asking for a ride. Let me see if this will play on here. See if the Bluetooth is on. Stand by. Oh yeah. Oh crap. I'll call him back. Here we go. You ready? Let's see how he handles this. I texted him, said you're gonna have to walk.
So we're gonna hear it on the headphones?
Hello?
You should.
And if we talk, he'll hear
Push
us?
that volume
Hello?
up on the blue button. Yeah. There you go, right there. Hey, son.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
What's up?
Yeah, did you get my text about my friends?
No.
You have friends?
Yeah.
How'd you do that? You're paying them?
Do they want
Are you on the
candy?
podcast?
Yeah, I'm on the pod. You're on the podcast.
Wait, can you hear me?
Okay.
My friend
Yes.
changed it to the move. He can hear you?
Declan, you can hear me?
Yes.
What the?
You're so cute.
Can your friends come over for candy?
Your friends changed it to the movies. This is where you guys are going to make out?
Sure.
Okay.
What movie are you watching?
It's the Minecraft movie.
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay. And this is tomorrow?
Yeah.
So you're not going to stay the night?
No.
Okay. And when are you...
I don't. Huh?
Nothing. We'll discuss details when you get here.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Bye.
Goodbye.
Wait.
Wait.
Give me one line from the movie.
No.
Just yell it.
No.
Oh, come on.
There's a bunch of kids at the park right next to me. So
Where are you?
Oh, what park?
the one out by my bus stop.
Oh, I thought you weren't allowed 500 yards in the park.
No, I broke
He's
the rules. Though.
unregistered. He can get as close as he wants. All right, son. Be careful getting home.
Okay. Bye.
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 How funny.
Do I turn this down or do I just...
You can. Yeah. Probably best. Yeah. In case I get a notification. What were we saying?
Who was talking last? You were? I was?
You were.
You were? I don't know.
Well, no. I think this was a really great question. and I think a lot of people think about this, even, Christian people probably have these moments, but we go to our circles and we're like, yeah, heck yeah, I got faith. Oh, faith has been great. And it's like, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does it mean to act out your worship? What does that mean? I know when I talk with conviction about what I feel God is telling me, I feel like it's true even if I don't believe it's true, which is kind of a weird statement to make.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like this is God's message. Like, in fact, even for maybe over a year now, I feel like God has been telling me, get back on the podcast, put me in somewhere in that mix, and you don't need to worry about anything. I don't know how that's going to play out. I'm nervous about it. I live in a world, especially your mom's a very practical person. How do you do that? How do you just move forward with nothing but faith to invest in your future? And there has to be a point where I just decide to do it and just let go and be like, okay, well, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and I'll just say a part of how everybody has the Holy Spirit inside of us, and I feel like sometimes God speaks to us through one another, or will just show us signs. Because there's definitely been times in my life when I've been struggling, and like, say I'll be talking to Jake, and he'll say a sentence, and like for him it's like it's nothing, but like it'll hit me, and I'm like, whoa, I needed that. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Like,
Amen.
just like random stuff like that will happen.
Yes. Yeah, maybe that's it. These little intricate moments, these little idiosyncratic, like, shared time with other people where they're like, hey, by the way, like that, somebody telling me that so-and-so got my truck.
Yeah.
That's how I took it.
Or like when I was running that one day, and the random person in the truck was like, hey, you can do it.
Yes.
And I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, I can do it. Thank you.
Yes. And, that's how we've chosen to see it. And for you, Jake, is that something that you can relate to? Have you ever had moments like, I mean, with your sister, obviously, this kind of hit you.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was thinking the last couple minutes. I remember a few years ago, it was more like just the moment with Christ. I was sitting with a good buddy of mine, and he's not atheist, but he was not a believer.
Like, what is, like, agnostic?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
But we
More or
were sitting
less,
in his backyard, and it was late. We were drinking, and we were just kind of, sitting there bullshitting, and we got to talking about Christianity and just religion in general. And then it kind of went quiet, and I was, in my head, I was like, I was questioning it again, just faith in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, just, in my head, I'm like, man, just give me a sign, like anything.
Yeah.
And little did I know, my buddy sitting next to me was thinking the same thing in his head. And I just remember the sky just lit up. Like, I mean, it was like lightning, but it was, I mean, as far as you can see everywhere around you, the sky just lit up at like 2 a.m.
Wow.
And I just sat there, and we both were just in shock. And I looked at him, and I go, dude, you're not going to believe this, but I just asked for, like, any type of sign to continue down the road, or like down, with life type thing.
Yeah.
And he was like, dude, I did too. Like, I was starting to think about it, and, thinking about Christ, and I just asked for a sign as well. And we both kind of were in that moment, and that was more of that kind of started pulling me out of that hole I was in with the Lord, as far as, questioning him when I was dealing with all the things that I was dealing with. And after that, it was, that was like a kind of a wake up call for being more in tune with the Lord, I'll say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was, like I said, it was just a big kind of like wake up call. And
yeah, it's a little like, hey, Jake, what's up? I'm right here.
Yeah.
Just a little wink.
Yeah.
Just a little reassurance. Wink. And it's funny because you guys have never wavered too far, I'm assuming, from your faith-based perspective on how your life is playing out and how that has a part in it. And I've been on the other end where it's nowhere to be found, and I'm blaspheming God. And even now, like when I speak on it, I'm having two perspectives at the same time. I'm looking at it from a secular point of view where, like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
You know, like the devil on my shoulder, like, yeah, bullshit. And then the better part of me is like, well, everything in your life is linked to this belief, and using this faith to navigate everything. And I think the moral of the story for me is no matter how much I know God is present, I'm always going to have my part. I'm always going to have to be prepared to offer God's love to another person who needs it when God sends them my way. You know, that's the commitment. God has asked me, no matter what happens, no matter how I feel, your part in the deal is to do the right thing and to uphold the nature of what you believe true, which is the truth of Jesus, what he means as a character in history, but more so as my idol, as my North Star. And when people ask me, how do you get through this? My obligation is to say, look, man, believe what you want, but this is how this is panned out for me. And I feel like that's the deal I have with him.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, look, you can have doubts, you can have all this humanity, but because you've chosen to believe in Jesus, it has to be a part of the conversation. And only when it's kind of like when Peter's like, no, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, like those are the moments I'm most in fear of. Am I going to deny God when I'm faced with somebody who's in total opposition? And I think even then God sends you his good grace. He's like, it's all right.
Well, I think there's a point of like people that don't believe. I think they are there for a reason.
Right.
Like there has to be doubters, and there has to be there should be those thoughts in your head, I think, like of having doubt, because, you know, if I ask you a question, what's 1 + 1? Like, yeah, I know it's 2. Okay. Like I already know that. If Jesus was talking to every one of us, we would know it. So like then that takes away that feeling or that sense of belief. And so when you talk to people who do doubt, then that goes a little bit into you to where like, oh yeah, maybe I doubt that too.
Yeah.
And I think when you can get past that point and you're like, you know, no, I'm gonna stick through this and I'm gonna let this ride, then I think that just strengthens your belief of it even more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the goal is to stay true to your story. And no matter what, if you're asked and you live your life by blind faith, you just have to fucking bite it.
Yeah.
And go for it.
So I kind of want to ask you guys a question, because I know you guys are both very in tune with your faith.
Sorry, we're out of time. Go ahead.
It's a really tough question.
Okay.
But let's say hypothetically scientists tomorrow prove that Big Bang and evolution was what happened,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they prove Christianity or all religions in general were false.
I have a good answer for this, but go on.
What would your life after that be? Like, would you continue to go to church? Would you continue to believe even though it was proven, wrong? Whatever the case, like what would that change for you?
Yeah, go for it.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
I don't think it would change. Like even like something weird, like even if something was like proven like 100%, like, yeah, this is true and religion is wrong, it's kind of the same to how it is now. Like we have the scientific, like,
exactly.
Yeah, like, oh, the Big Bang was a thing, and like we don't have proof. Like, yeah, we have the Bible, and yeah, we have stories, but like me living in the 21st century, like we don't have like people like Jesus talking to one of us, so like we don't have proof. But yeah, I would still just lean on my faith. And the thing that I always like to say, whenever I do talk to somebody who like doubts the whole if I'm wrong and you're right, then when we die, then we die. Like, doesn't matter. But if I'm right and you're wrong, it's not looking too good for you, buddy.
Yeah, and here's a couple things. If you had an astrophysicist explaining to you the details of the death of a star, there'd be a moment in that conversation where your eyes would glaze over and you would just wait for him to stop talking. I feel like if God were to explain to us what all was there before we came about or before he created Earth, that's what would happen. Because
Yeah.
we don't have the capacity or the ability to translate that language, to
Yep.
translate those mathematical equations that at some point, like, you would just have to appreciate your ignorance as this species, and I feel like even biblically, like for a long time, I thought too, like, oh yeah, Adam and Eve, whatever, 5,000 years, no, whatever. But it's like, why wouldn't God be that clever to be able to create a perception that things have been here for billions of years, millions of years, just so your little human brain wouldn't fucking spaz out and explode inside of its shell?
Yeah.
Like, like there's only so much we can comprehend as a human being. You're dumb if you think God wouldn't be able to anticipate that. Like, that's the dumbest thing ever. Yeah. And to me, he's been so loving that he's like, okay, well, I'll just fluff it up a little bit, and let them know the lights were off and then they were on.
Yeah.
And then, oh, look, it's a magic trick. And that's the thing that I challenge any non-believer. Like, you believe in a lot of magic in your own life. What's wrong with believing in this magic? Because in the end, this magic always brings it back to love. When you think about God and the way he looks at us and the way that he looks at creation, it's all about the love he has for us. And no matter what the history is of the world, the planet, the solar system, the universe, etc., you're always going to end up back in that small little nucleus of a soul where you have to accept, like, I don't know, but to believe that there's a fatherly figure out there who is waiting for me to get home, much like I hope my own father waits for me to get home. I think that's better.
Yeah.
That makes my heart heal,
No,
whereas
definitely.
other options don't,
No,
Do you
I
have an
agree.
answer for your own question?
Me personally, I mean, I really relate to what you said as far as, we don't know. I mean, faith is kind of blind in general.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you as far as I would kind of continue the same road that I'm on as far as my beliefs. I mean, I don't, we don't truly know what, we really don't know what, like you said, it was however many years ago, well, thousands of years ago, whatever. But yeah, I would continuously believe, and I really like what you said about the whole, if you were right and I was wrong,
Yeah.
we die, whatever. But if I'm right, you're wrong,
Right.
then you're gonna be in a lot worse situation.
Yeah. For
I
eternity.
really like that
Yeah.
analogy there.
Going back to our conversation in the garage, one of the big questions that you brought up, kind of a heavy hitting question, was, if you had one question to ask God, if you were given the chance to, whether it was like in a dream or just like right now, or if it was when you died, and you can ask him one question about anything that you wanted, what would that question be? To either of you.
All of the moments that I have explained and given my testimony about where I think God showed up, I would ask God, were those true? Was that you? Were those moments? And the times where I woke up in the middle of the night and felt like the veil was open just a little bit and I got to see what was actually going on, was that a real memory? Was that constituted by you or one of your angels, or, because these are memories for me. These are moments where I'm like, I feel like that happened.
Yeah.
I don't really know, because it's hard to discern whether that was a fantasy or a memory. And that's what I would ask him. It's like, were these true? And other than that, like, I'm okay with whatever else he has to offer. Mind you, that being said, and also what we just talked about, like what happens beyond this body is it's irrelevant. It's not a human experience. Those questions don't really even need answers. So as a hypothetical, and if I get a perspective as an ex-human in that moment, that would be cool. But otherwise, I would think I would just be in a complete state of gratitude and being like, man, I'm so glad I'm here.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, I hate to admit it because like I would love to have that answer of, why would you let all the wrong happen in the world, that kind of thing. But I mean, I'm pretty selfish. I think I would ask more so about my personal life, and I think the biggest one for me would be why didn't you let baseball continue for me?
Interesting.
Just because, again, like it's a selfish question, but that's been my question since the tumor. It's I mean, I know like we've talked in the past about how baseball kind of started falling out for you because of the fact that your dad was being the way he was.
Yeah,
like
he was pushing
it wasn't
me away
as fun. It wasn't, a game anymore.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Baseball to me, it was always a game in the back of my head, but it was obviously life too, like we talked about.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I'm going to interject real quick. Knowing you, and I mean, outside of like the joking around that we do, you're a super like macho dude, and like you keep things super professional. But like when I see you out on the field, whether it was like practice or games, like it looked like you're like a 10-year-old kid, and like there wasn't
it's
like,
funny, you just gave me chills, because that's how I love the game, and like I was talking about earlier, I credit a lot of that to my mom. I hate to admit it, but I when I became good at baseball, it was kind of to prove to my dad that I didn't need him, because my dad was, I mean, I've talked about it with you.
Yeah.
My dad, from the time I was 14 to college, I think he'd been to 4 of my games, which we played a lot of baseball.
yeah.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, for me, my mom just always, I mean, she just instilled in my brain that, don't lose sight of what baseball is to you. And it's funny that you bring that up, because I just told my sister that last night, because she started talking about softball, and she's obviously a really good little softball player. And she was talking about how she doesn't know if she wants to play softball in college, because she just wants to start working on her career. Like she wants to go into anesthesiology tech. And I was like, Lexi, you got to remember that if you go straight to a 4-year, let's say that obviously there isn't much after college for softball players. I was like, you're going to be 22 and you're going to have 4 years of your school paid for, and that you could have been working towards whatever you want to do in the future.
Yeah.
But my mom she always just told me, if you ever lose the love of the game because it's just a game, which I used to get obviously really mad about how I was performing, but it would only
it's because you cared.
It's because
it meant
I cared
so much to you. Yeah.
And so it was just always the fact of being with my brothers and having that, like the safe space, like we were talking about, and I don't know if you remember, but after kind of when I got cleared from the tumor, when me, you, and Spencer went out to the field at Twin Oaks.
Yeah.
And I told you guys, I was like, dude, like this, we hit for whatever, hour and a half, 2 hours. And I was like, dude, the last 2 hours, I have not thought once about my medical. I haven't thought about how I'm going to pay these bills. It was just always baseball and how much I love the game and how much I just loved being out there.
Yeah, that was your therapy session.
Exactly. And like we talked about with therapy in general, I know you've obviously been to a real therapist. And for me, it was nothing against that. Like I respect you more for going, but for me personally, it was almost another one of those, like, I gotta stay this macho man. I can't go to a real therapist. Like I don't talk about my feelings like that.
I can't ask for help.
I can't ask for help. I mean, not too long ago, I went 3 days without eating. because I was broke and I didn't want to just ask for help. And I finally hit up Christoph and I was like, dude, can you spot me $10 so I can just get some food?
Oh, so you weren't fasting?
I was fasting.
Oh, okay.
I got really hungry and I happened to be broke at the time.
It just happened to coincide.
yeah, of course.
Starvation process.
But yeah, I mean, baseball was my therapy, and it's, I mean, to this day, it's hard to, continue without baseball. I mean, I went and played that adult league last year, and it was like, it's not the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I went out there, and it's like, these aren't my brothers.
Yeah.
These are just dudes that are just doing this to get away from their kids for a few hours or their wives for a few hours, whatever. And I still took it. I mean, you can ask any one of those guys. I still was like, this is life. Like,
yeah.
My first game, I went 4 for 4 with a walk and I hit for the cycle. And then the next game I went like 3 for 5 and I was pissed.
Yeah.
And they're like, dude, why are you mad? You hit another home run. You had 2 doubles. And I'm like, yeah, well, those 2 at bats, why didn't I hit?
Right. Yeah.
And it was like, it's just always, I was mad for an hour after the game. And then it's like my mom's voice just would replay in my head. And it's like, don't lose sight of why you're on that field. That was the game that you fell in love with. And it was, like you said, it's therapy. It's when you're on that field, whether it's practice, game, adult league, you just kind of, all your troubles in the world go away for that few hours.
Yeah. And, going back to what you said of like why that got taken away from you. I mean, I think there's like parts in our lives where we always ask why. I mean, like for you, whether it's like, why did I get fired over something that was so stupid? I think for you, it was because you were supposed to get out of that.
Yeah.
That toxic environment where they were working you like 12, 13 hours a day and it was affecting you physically and mentally. And Jake, I don't know why. I wish I had an answer for you.
No, it's funny because when it, the first like year after, when people would ask me about it, I'd run into whoever, right? Maybe it was someone from high school or whatever. And it's like, oh, how's baseball going? And I'm like, oh, I don't play anymore, explain the story. And I would say, God has a plan. And, for the first year, it was, I was really at a low point. So I didn't believe it, but I didn't want people to know the truth.
It's hard to say that when you don't have that plan.
But nowadays, I do truly believe it, that God has a plan for all of us. And that if baseball wasn't it for me, then it wasn't it for me. I know I'm going to do something meaningful in life. I want to help others. Like when I was looking for jobs, I was looking, at firefighting and, all that kind of things because I want to help others.
Right.
I want to, whether it's a fire or if it's just a stressful situation, whatever the case, I want to help others. And
Which is, that's to me, that's the right perspective, because I think God, when you give your life to God and you on the surface commit to this idea, like, hey man, whatever you got in store for me, I'm down. I'm in for the cause, and like I want to go to heaven one day, and like, there's all this back end deals about it, but in essence, like at some point, because I think you've made that commitment spiritually, you have to make the commitment to let go.
yeah,
And what he's asking us to do is be prepared to honor this relationship with me when I send somebody in your direction.
yes,
And it may not be somebody that you're helping directly, but allowing that person to help you fosters some ignition of a relationship between him and them. And like, that's our only obligation as followers. Is I may not know where this is going. It doesn't mean you can't pursue what you desire to pursue, but you have to accept the failures and the denials as just part of the, and I'm, faced with this right now. Doesn't mean I can't feel the feelings. I can't feel the depression, but I can't linger there.
Yeah.
I can't live there. I have to get past the human aspect and realize that as a Christian, I've chosen to let that go. I've chosen to move forward with my best foot and with my half of the prayer answered, because he's not going to like inhabit my body and lift my limbs and
Yeah.
bring me to that next level. I have to just embrace, like, what opportunities is me being pushed into this new phase offering other people around me, and my livelihood. I don't have to worry about that. As much as I want to naturally, it's almost pointless,
Yeah.
because it's not like I'm ill or I'm not mobile. I have my faculties about me. Like, bye, son. Bye, son.
No, I totally understand what you mean. And I know I kind of extended that conversation, but back to you, Papa, would be your question.
I think my question would just be why.
Why
Like why life? Like why everything? I know one of the things that I said is like I'm just giving an example of like God was lonely and wanted like company.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why didn't he just like make angels? Which I mean, he did obviously, but like why didn't he just make everybody good and like already start them in heaven and like we just lived our lives there? Like why put people on earth away from him and like what is the point of life? Like why is this a thing?
To suffer.
Yeah.
The only time you can be enlightened to good is to know what suffering is.
Yeah.
And I think that's what God's goal was, is how can I provide myself my own needs, and that is to know that others struggle like me. And I think that's really the reality of it. The insane loneliness that must have been felt
Yeah.
to just be by yourself. The only way to justify that is to be there for somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
to put your suffering to good use, turning bad into good. And I think that that's the hard part for us as believers. Is like, what does that really even mean? Why would you do that to yourself? But only God knows.
Yeah, and I
That's
think
his position.
yeah, and I think he does that by like putting certain people in your life.
Yeah.
And like just looking at you two, I mean, Jake, you're like a brother
No,
to me.
likewise.
Honestly, like you're somebody that I can turn to like if I need help, and I know that you'll be there with a gun in your hand and like you'll put your life on the line with me, and like for you like filling in that like dad position that like I needed in my life, or like sometimes you're not my dad and sometimes you're just like my friend, like someone that I can just like bullshit and talk to sometimes. And I'm truly blessed of like having you guys specifically, or just like other people in my life. And I think it's crazy just like how he does that, how he can put certain people that like you need, like whether it's you being like a super funny and like being able to make me laugh.
Some old lady trapped in a fat Filipino. I hear you.
Yeah.
I love you too.
Aww.
We'll call it an end to the podcast there. But likewise, there isn't a day that goes by where I don't, no matter what I'm going through, that I don't look at my life and think, the next time somebody asks me how's it going, if my answer is anything but amazing, shame on me. And that's how I answer anybody who's texted me that I haven't talked to in a while. How's it going? Amazing.
Yeah.
There's no denial. Like, what a slap in the face that would be if I'm like, oh, not so great.
Yeah.
Shut up. Yeah. So, amen.
Amen.
Amen.